Hello there and welcome back to another YouTube video. I think we're on like 30 odd YouTube videos now. We have been slogging it out. But today we are going to be talking about this thing right here. Specifically, a Garmin watch. Now, a lot of you guys might have Apple Watch, you might not have a watch, you might have a Coros, you might have a Fitbit, you might have something a little bit different. Now, a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is relevant across the board for all of these watches, but I'm specifically going to be diving into the Garmin. I'm going to be diving into my one, which some of the other watches may not have these features, some of the other watches may have more features, but this is the Garmin Epix 2. I've had for about a year now. We're going to be talking about some of the features which are on the Garmin in relation to our performance, fitness and health. We are going to talk about the features which I think are super useful and beneficial for your training, fitness and health. And I'm going to talk about how some of the other features may not be as helpful and you kind of need to take them with a pinch of salt. So let's dive right into it straight away. One of the best features on any of these watches, I believe, is the HRV, or the heart rate variability. Heart rate variability is the measure or the variation in time between each of your heartbeats. You might be led to believe that if it's, super slow and super consistent and it's always on point, that might be a good thing. But in theory, it's actually not usually indicative of a good HRV or a positive HRV. HRV can reflect whether the body is in a sympathetic or a parasympathetic state. If you are in a constant sympathetic or fight or flight mode, when you're super stressed, super fatigued, super tired, super burnt out, then heart rate variability range can actually go down, it can actually lower. There can be less variation between the beats of the heart. And what that suggests is that your body is trying to recover. It is trying to slow things down. However, what we see in super well-trained athletes and people who really look after themselves is they actually have a high heart rate variability. The number is higher typically. There's obviously better and worse heart rate variability, but it can be very individual to you. So if you see your number is low and you're concerned about that, don't be. Some people just naturally sit that little bit lower and have less variation between heartbeats. Some people will be much higher. What we're looking for is consistency, and on your watch, we're looking for it to float around the green. If you are constantly in the red when you're looking at your watch, then that's when we need to understand that we're maybe overtraining, we're maybe overworked, we're maybe super fatigued and super stressed out. And that's when we can actually begin to think about things such as recovery, deloads, sleeping more, pulling our training volume back to actually then affect that. If you are constantly in a low heart rate variability, or you're in the red like your watch is telling you, then that would suggest that you're maybe doing a little bit too much and you need to take a step back. So the best thing about Garmin and things like the Whoop is it's really quite good to collect HRV data overnight. So if you're wearing your watch while you sleep, it can give you a really good idea of the consistent range over a 7-day period. With this Garmin, it has around about 10 to 14 days of battery life. So I get constant data coming through this about my HRV. And I've utilized a lot of this data to take a step back when it's needed. So HRV as a feature on the Garmin, I am giving it 5 out of 5. It's super useful and super beneficial to keep an eye on. So the second feature we're going to talk about is training readiness. Training readiness is a combination of different metrics which fall into this one number, which I'm going to show you on the screen. Now, training readiness is a combination of sleep score, recovery time, your acute training load, your HRV and your stress levels, alongside a couple of other things, day-to-day heart rate, training intensity and volumes. And what that'll do on a day-to-day basis, at any point, it will spew out a number based on what it thinks your readiness to train is. What I've begun to understand about this metric is you must take it with a pinch of salt. If you're someone that trains pretty consistently and pretty hard, maybe 6-7 times a week, very rarely are you ever going to be at 100% training readiness. The only time I ever find myself at 100% training readiness is before an event when I have done a taper. Now that's actually really useful information because that would suggest that I've given my body sufficient recovery to be going into that event 100% good to go. Now the weekend just passed there. I did an event on Saturday, which was reasonably tough. I then had a half marathon on Sunday, which again was going to be quite a full send effort. Now, I woke up on Sunday morning and my watch, although I was pleasantly surprised, was at about 60% training readiness, which for me is, I'm good to go, I can go for it. However, I could have most definitely woken up that morning with 20% readiness after the session I did on Saturday. And would have I looked at my watch and just went, nope, can't do it, not ready, gotta go and sit at home and rest and recover. Potentially some people might use that information and take it for gospel and sit at home. Something that is super, super important when it comes to understanding your readiness to train, both physically and mentally, is like, how do you actually feel in yourself? Your feeling within and the feeling of your body is always going to be the best metric here. So I like this training readiness number. It satisfies me when I see 90 to 100, when I'm well recovered and I'm feeling good. But I don't take it for gospel, because there are so many times that I've seen it on a number below 50 and I've still wanted to train and still felt like I could train and had a great training session anyway. So take it with a pinch of salt. But obviously, if you wake up every single morning and this is 20, 20, 20, 30, 20, 30, it's probably telling you some valuable information that you should take note of. So for training readiness, I'm going to give that a 3 out of 5 because I do think it's a good metric, but I think just looking at your HRV on its own is probably going to be just as helpful. Next feature is sleep score, and it is the one that people probably get very pernickety about and get a little bit attached to and a little bit emotional. What I have swiftly realized since having a child is that sleep score could make you feel super depressed if you've got a child and they don't sleep well and you're not really getting the perfect sleep. Sleep score is made up of a varying amount of different metrics, and it's actually really impressive how much data you can get with your sleep now. I genuinely do think it's a pretty helpful metric. Sleep score is made up of sleep duration, average stress score during sleep, total deep sleep, total light sleep, total REM sleep, the awake time during the night, and restlessness. Your watch can tell your HRV, your heart rate, it can tell when you're moving. Some of the watches can tell your body temperature. They can tell when you've actually physically woken up. It can tell when you've went to the toilet. It can tell the time that you've actually fallen asleep and the time that you've woken up, for the most part. Sometimes it does miss things and thinks I'm still sleeping when I'm potentially awake, or vice versa. Based on all that information, it spews out a sleep score, and it will give you, anywhere from average sleep, great sleep, to bordering on perfect sleep. You might kind of understand already what good sleep looks like for you. For me, it's about 8 hours, but do I usually get 8 hours? Probably not. The wee man wakes up at about 5:15 every single morning. I would potentially like another 45 minutes in my bed if I could get it, and that would probably spew me out a perfect sleep score majority of the time if I was able to get it, but I can't, so I can't get too attached to it, and I can understand that while having a 1-year-old, I'm not going to get perfect sleep. So I think this metric's really helpful. I would give it at least a 4 out of 5. It's not perfect science. It's not going to be the end of the world if you do have a shitty sleep score. Again, it's one of these things where a kind of reverse placebo effect, where you look at your watch and it says that, you've had a really shit sleep, but you feel okay in general. That can begin to lead you to believe that, I do actually feel a bit tired, I do feel a bit fatigued, I'm not going to feel great in my gym session later on. So take it with a pinch of salt. Don't lose any sleep over it. Sorry about that. And you'll be absolutely fine. VO2 Max, a pretty popular buzzword in the industry right now. A lot of people talking about it and a lot of people getting quite obsessed and quite anal about this. VO2 Max is one of the major and main indicators of cardiovascular, heart and physical health. Having a high VO2 max can be one of the best predictors of good health in later life as well. If you can work on your VO2 max and work on your aerobic conditioning, it's probably going to be one of the most important things that you will ever do for longevity and for genuinely living longer and living a healthy life. So it is a pretty useful metric. My VO2 max, I actually got tested not so long ago with an actual, I had the mask on, my oxygen was getting taken, every breath I took was getting taken in, and funnily enough, quite interestingly, the data that I got from that was absolutely bang on in comparison to my watch. So me, a mere mortal who is, all right at running and all that sort of stuff, my VO2 max is around about 59-60. Now, the Tour de France cyclists, Tadej Pogačar, try to pronounce his name's a hard one, Slovenian name. I think his VO2 max was registered at around about 89.4, which is absolutely bonkers. Most of the cyclists on the tour, they're probably around about 70 to 85. Now that is like, these are the guys with the best VO2 max in the whole world. Like, there's not really a sport. If you can think of a sport, please let me know if there's anyone that can like equal this. Obviously marathon runners and stuff like that, they'll have really good VO2 max, but the cyclists, like, I've been watching the Tour de France the last like couple of weeks, and it is bonkers how fit these guys are. Like, some of the fittest guys in the world who are just pushing themselves to the absolute limit. So VO2 max, just to kind of let you into what it actually is, it is the maximum volume of oxygen in millimeters that you can consume per minute per kilogram of body weight at your maximum performance. So VO2 max is zone 5, it's the very top of your performance, like when you are pushing yourself to your absolute limit. How much oxygen can you get going through your body? The thing that you need to do with the watch with VO2 max is you need to collect data over a period of time. You need to have run hard, done hard sessions, registered and saved them on the watch to then get that data and get an understanding of where your VO2 max is at. And it's a real good indicator of, am I getting fitter? Am I getting better cardiovascularly? And it doesn't mean you need to do VO2 max sessions. It doesn't mean you need to do super hard sessions. It just means you need to train and you need to push and you need to kind of get fitter and see those times improving, and your VO2 max will probably improve. So VO2 max, super helpful metric. The watch does quite a good job of giving you a pretty valid number, although it can't be exact science. So I would rate that a 4 out of 5. Next metric is performance metrics or race timings. These again have to be taken with a pinch of salt. So what you will find with these is that it'll estimate your 5K time, your 10K time, your half marathon time, and your marathon time, if running is the thing that you're interested in. Now you can dive even deeper into this, and you can go into the Garmin Connect app and you can actually start registering events and registering races that you're going to do. The Garmin actually does have a database of various different races on there, but you can insert your own race, insert like, you know, the levels of elevation, and you can insert the distance of the race. It could be quite a unique race where there's maybe like 15 kilometers or something. It's maybe something a little bit different from your usual race, and it can help you predict based on your training how you might come out with a time. I've seen a lot of people talk about the fact that like these have been inaccurate and they've actually ended up beating that time by quite a considerable bit. So I'm going to dive into my watch right now and I'm going to see what it is saying for my race performance. My 5K prediction is 17 minutes 19. We'll see about that. My 10K prediction is 37:24. My half marathon prediction is about 1 hour 24:33, which I don't think I would have been far off of getting on Sunday had the race actually finished. And then my marathon prediction is 3 hours 7 minutes. Very interesting. That would take a lot of training. And the one thing it doesn't take into consideration is where I'm at with my training right now. It doesn't really know exactly what I'm training for. I've not set it into the app or into the watch. For me to go and knock out a 3 hour 7 minute marathon tomorrow just wouldn't happen because I haven't trained up to that marathon distance and I have not built the mileage. I would quite swiftly falter, not down to my cardiovascular ability, but my ability for my legs to actually just carry me that far. No doubt going at that pace, I would probably find that I would fall off a cliff about 25K. So don't read that and just decide that you can go out and do a marathon that your watch predicts. You need to do the training, you need to get the evidence. So for performance metrics, I like it, and it's really good motivation more than anything. I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. Next metric, resting and active calories. Calorie counters and calorie burn on a watch is notoriously inaccurate. I think there was a statistic in a study that came out not so long ago that said it could be up to 75% wrong, which is quite a big buffer that doesn't really make much sense. The problem that comes with the calorie burn on the watch is when it is kind of drawn up alongside someone trying to track their calories and trying to get an understanding as to what a definite calorie deficit is for that person. I would not use this metric as something to compare to how hard you should hit a calorie deficit or how you should control your food. It's just never going to be reliable and it's hard to understand. Now, resting calories is, you know, your basal metabolic rate plus the calories that you burn through just doing day-to-day stuff, plus active calories. So active calories are the calories that you burn through planned exercise. That's like, you know, going for a brisk walk, that's doing a run, that's going to the gym. So your watch will try and add up your resting calories plus your active calories and give you a calorie number for the end of the day as to how many calories it thinks you've burned. Notoriously inaccurate, potentially going to be in a ballpark number, and I know these watches are getting better and better and more accurate at getting a proper good understanding of this. Give it 10 years, you'll have the number bang on the dot, I guarantee it. I'm going to give that a 2 out of 5. So now we have threshold. So when I go into my watch and I click on to performance, if I go below VO2 Max on my Garmin, I get an idea of what my lactate threshold is. So threshold is a specific area within a couple of different heart rates. It's quite hard to always pin this down exactly without having some scientific testing as to where your actual threshold is. The threshold is the place where you begin to create more lactate, and lactate begins to cycle through the body. And within that threshold, the lactate recycles and is used again as energy and is used again as fuel. If we go over that threshold and push into that really high heart rate number, that zone 5, that VO2 max, that is when the body cannot clear that lactate with enough efficiency so that you don't, begin to fall off a cliff. Your fitness goes down the way. So why this is a really good metric is it helps you understand the kind of pace or the heart rate that you should be operating at when you're doing your cardiovascular work. Because if you push beyond that threshold, that's when fatigue comes on really quickly. That's when you wake up the next morning with super sore legs and you really push your body super, super hard. It's currently telling me that my lactate threshold is about 359 pace per kilometer and about 174 beats per minute. So how I use that information is when I'm training threshold or when I'm trying to train like a threshold session or a threshold pace, I make sure that I don't go over that pace, because if I begin to go over that pace, that's when I go over into that red zone and I can't get back. So yeah, interesting metric that I really do like. Again, I got scientific testing done and this was almost bang on for what my scientific testing was telling me. Now, that's not going to be the same for every single person, but I think it's a pretty good metric and it's usually quite accurate. The final metric that I want to talk about that pops up on the Garmin when you are doing any sort of physical activity, typically running or cycling, is the performance condition. Performance condition is a real-time metric that judges your performance based on the first 6 to 20 minutes of, let's just say, the run that you're doing. And it will give you a number, either minus something or plus something, based on how it thinks you could perform today. So that bases it on sleep, HRV, recovery, acute load, the training that you've done in the previous days. And it will make a judgment based on how it thinks, what condition you're in today. Just the other day there, when I was running my half marathon, I got a nice little +4 popped up for my performance condition. And it told me that, I was good to go. I was ready to train hard and today was going to be a good day. That can have a real positive effect on me when I'm running, and it can make me feel, all right, okay, I am feeling good today. I've obviously recovered well and I'm good to go for this race. However, there are various other times where I've been training and I've actually seen, not that so long ago, just a couple of weeks ago, I got -11. Instantly, I was like, oh shit, what's wrong with me today? I kind of actually didn't really know what performance condition actually meant. So I had to go and Google it on Garmin and had to research it a little bit to understand. But yeah, basically what had happened is I had a bad sleep the night before. I wasn't feeling too sharp. I'd actually taken off really slow on the run because I was doing a warm-up lap. And what the watch had began to understand is that, like, okay, he's going slow today. He's not feeling good. His performance condition's down. And you know what? I was actually feeling fine when I thought about it. I was feeling absolutely fine and my session ended up being quite good. But for a start, it kind of just set me back. So performance condition is not a great metric because it can really throw you off if you think too much into it. You can turn this off, but what I would say is just take it with a pinch of salt. It is just giving you some feedback based on the first 6 to 20 minutes of your run and based on all the other metrics involved with your watch. I wouldn't do anything differently after seeing performance condition go up or go down. Stick to the plan, stick to the exercise prescription and do what the training plan says. So yeah, a couple of different metrics that you can use on your Garmin watch that I think are quite helpful and some which are not so helpful. I would say that HRV, your performance metrics, your threshold, your sleep score are all really pretty useful metrics that I pay attention to on the majority of days of the week. Performance condition and things like resting and active calories, I would pay less attention to, but honestly, like, some of these metrics, they might be useful to you. You might enjoy using them. Let me know if there are any little hidden metrics or hidden features within the Garmin that you use that you find super helpful, or even on any of the other watches that you have. So yes, once again, thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. There will be plenty of other fitness, nutrition, performance related stuff popping up every single week for forevermore. So thank you, and see you again soon.